We're gathered in the Paula Cooper Gallery to look at and talk about an exhibition of work by Joel Shapiro. I'm here with Brant Junso and Jock Ireland, the usual crew. And today we're joined by the sculptor Lee Tribe. Thank you, Lee. This forum is being filmed and will be edited and posted by the amazing Rachel Bolander. Thank you, Rachel. We're pleased to be doing this in the gallery in the presence of the actual works, but in compliance with the gallery's rules, we are masked. This may sometimes affect the quality of the sound. We apologize in advance for this. Let's look at the work and talk about it. Anybody want to start? I find this work kind of like engaging and sweet, a lot of it. Delicate, sweet, delicate. I'm reminded in some instances of WILLARD, BOEPPLE, partly with just the kind of materials and the method of construction. But this work is a lot more lively, less kind of formally restricted. And you see Joel has taken to hanging some pieces, which kind of makes sense because I seem to think that not a lot, but some of the work where he has got kind of figurative, implied things that are unbalanced and require a substantial kind of hole in the ground to support them, don't really satisfy me, just because they don't stand up. So hanging these things, so they don't have to have that kind of implication of being able to stand on their own, which they can't, makes sense. Often I feel they're overly complicated, as in this one I'm looking at. You know, I think if it were mine, I'd find myself editing it and, you know, having fewer elements.
Yeah, with these, and all the sculptures in this room make me think of John Panting and his bird's nests that he did at sort of the end of his career. That I want these to get more complicated, is what I'm trying to say. But they're picked up with the tweezers and taken out of sort of complex world and presented in a kind of precious way.
These are in the wood. I mean, he seems to, there's a piece there that is made in wood like these, only cast in bronze. And I wonder if, you know, sometimes these are all quite late pieces, I think. And I wonder if the intention is to maybe cast some of these and then what you do with the color, because the color seems nice.
The color in these is kind of a little bit slopped on, not too fussy.
Right.
And some bits are left or wiped back.
Wiped back, I think.
To kind of emphasize that kind of casualness.
Yeah. I like the way it just touches the floor at one point, you know. I mean, I have a prejudice against, sculptures that are hung, from, you know, that are not self-supporting, but I don't find these, it seems somehow appropriate.
I have a similar prejudice, and it occurred to me that in a way this is, I call it a leg that goes to the ceiling, but it does speak of gravity. It does make you very aware of their gravity and the fact they're only touching one spot, which allows them to move.
Yeah.
And I found that one a bit odd. Stick a wine box underneath it.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. It was very nice wine.
These pieces in this room are very kind of carefully crafted, aren't they? I mean, with dowels and you know, really clean connections, and some of the others are just pinned together with that kind of you know, staple gun of sorts.
Yeah.
And sometimes even the joints bent, not you know, to get them. Yeah.
Is cast, is glue gun glue.
Well,
blobbed in and then cast.
Well, and some pins as well that have gotten taken out in the casting, but
so
you see the pinholes still.
Yeah, I really like the little wedges in the one next door.
Yeah, I mean the ones
they compensate for the way the materials are meeting.
Well, there is a difference. I mean, because when they're pinned together with that quick, you know, they often feel as if they're put together in the moment, you know, and just jiggled and done. Whereas these are, you know, there's a lot of carpentry, as it were, so that, you know, there's a lot of, you wonder if it was, you know, how you would go about that. Yeah, but this kind of thing can't be done quickly, you know, that.
Yeah, but it's done as quickly as possible with, or it seems to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's very difficult to get to join pieces of wood that aren't sort of one on top of the other. To have them going in different directions is a pain. But there's this feeling of spontaneity.
Looks like it's got a little shimmer there.
I don't know whether it's a shimmer, whether there's a tiny groove going into the.
It might be both.
But I mean, that you know, that kind of like it's.
I think these ones are quite emotional. I think these pieces in this room are quite emotional.
Say some more.
When they're monochrome, nearly monochrome, it's a little harder to reach. It's kind of at this sort of high key. It's almost like I hear this sort of high tenor sound with these pieces. With this one and that yellowish one. Something different with the blue piece. It's more tonal.
Some pieces of wood in here not painted, and that end not painted. It's possible the wood was painted before, you know, the work was assembled. That you know,
some elements.
A collection of wood was painted, and then a sculpture made out of some of that wood, and in some cases.
Well, this piece is a transcription of a freely joined piece using the pin gun.
That's what I'm wondering, and you know that for a fact?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that has to do with
so something was made in the usual quick pin way and then handed over to someone else to very carefully reconstruct. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like having it cast only by, you know, carefully.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah. This one remains in its pinned state, right?
Right.
Pinned and glued. And it had a different possibility of hanging, a different hook there. They give the sensation of being very direct, but I imagine there must be a lot of pulling apart and putting together again.
Yeah. Some of the pins have been cut back to the surface.
Yeah.
And here, where there's probably just air, there's a wedge has been inserted to make a stronger joint.
And you wonder about that one hanging at the height it is so that that bottom piece doesn't sit. If it were lowered, then presumably that could come down and sit flat on the ground.
pieces, I think, no matter how unlikely to impossible it might seem, are fundamentally figurative.
Yes. Yeah, no, they're no question. They are. And that's as much to do with the kind of gesture as it is to do with legs and arms, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know about figurative. When you said that, emotional, Brent, or
Yeah.
that vulnerability, even in the color, the color isn't as sort of bold as it often is. And there's almost something Gorky about this room, and the emotional, there's a feeling that is behind these rather than a figure.
No, I think the figurative quality is in the image as well, as in, in the sensation.
The figure is, like that one, for instance, it's not a complete, you don't get the idea of a complete figure. You get a captured moment of limbs in space.
Kind of decentered. Decentered.
Yeah.
And eccentric, almost like coreless.
Yeah.
That there's a kind of more readily seen or understood figural passage, and then it kind of breaks away. It's as if it's interrupted by another form, which then sort of reactivates the figuration in another pitch, another direction.
It's interesting that you, Brent, you said houses, and he's famous for the houses that sit on the ground,
right,
as houses do. These are sort of sliding off each other into space. And, it's a big difference. I didn't pick up on the house business until you mentioned it. And I picked up on James Rosati, and a very different feel, much slicker, sort of.
Yeah, it's kind of a dream and a nightmare.
What is?
The house flying into the air, or wafted into the air, or twisted out of proportion, and
yeah. Well, this is almost volumetric, isn't it? This blue one.
Yeah.
Chunky pieces compared to long, delicate, thin pieces, and that's an unusual piece. It seems to me. It's like this upside down table with things flying off it.
The tabletop to the elements that seem to fall from it is emotionally a jolt.
Yeah, and they put this white print underneath it.
It's funny where you put the base there, but it's not on the base.
Yeah, and it changes things a good deal, doesn't it?
And then that one element hanging.
Very odd thing, isn't it?
And the fact that's been cut into a little bit.
Yeah.
It's all peculiar.
But I mean, it's like that.
It's sort of like a scrap piece.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the wood seems like it's just kind of repurposed from scraps. I have boxes of scraps like that.
It's an image of the studio. Like the Guston studio, and Giacometti's table upended, or the Smith Voltri work tables.
So I wonder if you actually build it with the table as a table. Because nothing goes beyond the length of the legs. So it could have been built up the other way and then just flipped. And this thing wasn't joined except by the way. So it just fell out. And that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're all inclined to turn work upside down from time to time, and sometimes they're better off. But it's unusual in having that kind of implication of a narrative, so, little story behind it. Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I guess that gives us a relationship to this thing on the ground.
What do you mean? That
I think this is just the gallery.
The hanging.
the pins
Yeah.
were cut through.
No, just the hanging. The fact
Just
that,
it.
yeah, I mean, it changes things a great deal. Doesn't it? You don't really need it, but
Yeah, well, from a distance, and I was looking at this, it struck me as this is the kind of thing, if you take the water away, that's what you can do in painting.
Uh-huh.
Right? So you can make a mark that isn't attached to the bundle,
yeah,
and it stays.
yeah.
But from a distance, you lose the wire to some extent, and it had that effect for me, just at that moment, like a little exclamation or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It's ambiguity and Joel sort of don't mix. That's a table.
It's the color that makes this thing, isn't it? The color that does so much for it.
And the mediation of the color.
Yeah, I know. The application of the color.
It's kind of inspired pairing.
What?
The placement of these two together.
Uh-huh. You like?
Yeah. Like this one so close to the corner. And the larger monochrome kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, they make me want to play with them. I want to turn them upside down, look at them, because they're kind of hand-sized, I suppose, and they seem solid enough to be able to.
Yeah.
Chunky.
The idea of playing with them does speak of the hand.
Yeah.
The hand size, the manipulation of the element.
There's a quality of casualness, isn't there, in this work that is very disarming, I find.
Yeah.
I can't quite believe it, and yet it's here. It's like somehow or other. I get a little bit of blue paint on that, and
I think it's.
I'll wipe it off there. I didn't mean that.
It's an interesting walk to come from Chamberlain to this, because I think that Chamberlain's work is so much about reflex. And the seeming casualness of this has a different quality.
It's so totally different, isn't it? I mean, the whole attitude to making, the object being. I mean, this work is articulate in a way that Chamberlain isn't.
I agree. I mean, it's two games of entirely different rules, but the kind of pure response, reflex formalism of Chamberlain is, I find kind of impressive on its own terms, but also unmoving.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Chamberlain, we'll get to talk about it, but it's impressive. But it sets out to impress.
And it's also.
This work doesn't. It sets out to engage.
I think it's kind of a record of a document of its time that he developed. And the years between these two, I think are quite.
Not sure I'm going to buy that.
Well,
there is a generation.
There's an attitude that Chamberlain came from,
well,
which was from the painters.
But I mean, speaking, I mean, if you're going to go there, then these are much closer to the Doyle work that we talked about last time, which were, you know, from the 60s.
Yeah.
Right. That's put that away. Yeah, I mean, it's just so. You look at the way that is attached to that. That's really.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was just bent because that wasn't in the right place. Or it'd be better over here. Weird. Weird and delightful. Yeah, I find this as satisfying as some of the other pieces. I think it's a kind of continuation of that line through to there. You very rarely get things, you know, existing as our friend Bruce would say, in the same plane. And these almost do, and it seems.
Well, it's a disappointing moment.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that decentering and kind of coreless figure thing happens here between the natural wood color and the painted elements. That there's a figure in orange and then at least one figure in pine that cross paths.
Yeah, I just see wood. Seeing the figures is hard for me.
Well, the unpainted pine, in effect, kind of frees the painted elements from gravity. It sort of suspends them in space, props them up,
Yeah,
and
it's not,
that's for sure.
hangs them out.
it's not as lively, is it, as some of the other pieces in the room over there. And I want to work on it, you know. I want to cut that down. I'm sorry, Joel. Sorry. All right.
Take a look at that one for
This
booking.
bronze one. Interesting that the bronze piece has kind of pride of place in a way in the gallery, doesn't it?
Or sideline.
Sorry?
Or sideline.
No, I think it's what you're presented with when you come in, as it were. You know, I'm surprised he didn't put it in the middle.
Yeah, it is disappointing. You know, it's these things are real. This is, you know, just for sale. And you know, those things you can sort of hardly pick up without breaking them. But still, that I can engage with them. I really have trouble. I just, you know, can hardly see it.
Really? Oh. They're not, that's not a kind of fundamental prejudice, is it, against
Yeah, I think no.
things in bronze?
It's real. You know, I want to put my finger on blue here, and it's not blue, and that's confuses me.
Well, I mean, I think what Jock may be touching on is first of all, if you have it cast, you can have multiple of them, but then they become also much less vulnerable in terms of just being transported around and handled, and you know, so they and I think Jock is implying that the casting you know, essentially a commercial obligation and doesn't really serve the work. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I hear what you say, and I think I'm not sure that I agree. I mean, I think that a cast of this quality that reproduces with such kind of exquisite detail, you know, you can recover. I mean, and there's a kind of magic in that, you know. There's a kind of extraordinary kind of sense of seeing what you're seeing and yet not seeing not getting what you're seeing, and I kind of it feels different when it is not as vulnerable. It just feels that you could pick it up and it wouldn't fall apart or it wouldn't transform, and there's something satisfying about that. So I'm not. I mean, I hear what you say and I understand what you say, but I'm not sure I feel the same way. You know, I do in many cases feel that way, but in this case, I'm not sure I do. I think I kind of actually like this.
For the record and for the sake of the conversation, it's unique bronze.
Is it?
It's a burnout.
Ah, it's a burnout.
So there won't be another.
Yeah.
Well,
but being a burnout, it really is kind of a record of a moment.
Yeah, but
it's truly lost.
Well,
it's not lost wax, but it's
yeah. But then it becomes sort of about the casting process.
Yeah.
And it's.
But I agree with Garth. It's a positive sense because it's a kind of a freeze frame and a kind of a change of state that's kind of frees the mind for a different conversation.
Yeah, but it's also just an inhuman, high-tech process.
Come on, Jock. I mean, people have been casting things in bronze for
They
a long
been
time.
casting. That's kind of.
No, but I mean, it's not the process of bronze casting is not a new technology.
No, but this kind of thing, I think is, you know, I don't know really a thing about casting.
It's true. It's fundamentally different from the early Chinese and Indian casting.
But I mean, is that critical? I mean, the fact is, that, as you report, this is a unique work made by a process that can't be. But if it had been made, you know, by a much more laborious process of, you know, lost wax, and there could be an addition, but we have it in this state, would it matter?
I think you'd feel it. You'd feel the difference.
You're saying it couldn't be done.
No, it could be done.
Then why would it matter?
I think there's a degree of spontaneity and unique moment in timeness that would be lost. And there's something kind of like singing about the geometry that I think would sort of slacken in.
So you're saying that it couldn't be done.
Mold making.
You're saying
assembly of wax.
It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be physically the same object.
Right.
That's not what I was asking. I mean, yes, I agree. If somehow the
I think
object itself,
conceptually and emotionally, it would be.
Assuming that you know, somebody were able to, you know, to take this and cast it and get exactly an identical object, does it matter?
Yeah. Doesn't matter. It would be impossible, but is that what you mean by mattering?
No, assuming it were possible, would it matter?
It would matter to me. I think I'd read it.
Yeah, you're saying you would be able to tell the difference. I'm saying if you couldn't tell the difference, but you knew the difference, does it matter? Conceptually, you know this thing that you could swap them over and you wouldn't know the difference.
It would still matter.
I just wanted to push a bit because of Jock's kind of like dismissal of this because it's been cast in bronze.
But I think, you know, I think it touches a fundamental question that like our generation gets to ask. Like how much are we losing or how much are we defrauded by technologies available to us that were inconceivable, you know, a short time ago.
Yeah.
And I think the loss is real.
Yeah, but the gain is real as well. The gain of accessibility.
Yeah, I don't believe in it.
Yeah, but I
You don't believe in accessibility, right?
Well, no, I mean, like the thing I think of instantly is the Musée Rodin. And Rodin at his death said, you know, there's been 20 casts of the man with broken nose. My estate is authorized to make 50 more in original size, 20 in a reduction, and 20 in an expansion, all of which is posthumous. Yeah. And I don't think he's well served by that. I mean, it's great as a business model. The Musée Rodin is flush. Yeah. But otherwise...
Yeah, but you know, I have a bunch of Degas sculptures, in quotes, from the Met. And I have them in my apartment. And you know, they're not the real thing. But it's a joy to have these things.
Yeah.
I have copies of the little Venuses, prehistoric Venuses. Yeah. But I'm never going to get an original.
Yeah.
It's great to have them there.
Yeah. And whereas,
so it's the element of illusion that is bothering you.
Yeah.
That bit of glue.
Yeah. It's really, it's
Ah.
kind of irritating.
Hmm.
But maybe that's good that it's irritating.
Yeah, well, if you see it as an illusion, then I understand.
Yes.
And the whole business of making something in one way and then having it transformed through a process of some other is always fraught, isn't it? And you know, there doesn't seem to be. But in this case, it seems to be, I think, successful. Can you see the figure here? Yeah, pretty obvious, isn't it?
well, you know, when you say that, I think of Joel's Running Man, or whatever the title is. And I also think of Catherine GILI's Leonida, that sort of first very figurative piece that she made in Sculpture from the Body project or whatever. And there's something deeply wrong with those. And when her, you know, she has made some very good, or what I think great things that echo the figure, and feel it, like Paul Taylor dancers. That they're terrific, but they're not that sort of. You know, I don't immediately. It's not directly a figure in the way that Joel's Running Man is, and I don't want to look for. I don't want to look for limbs.
No, I mean, I think in this, you know, standing in front of this, its weakness is how, you know, how clearly this can be read as figure, arms, legs, body, with appendages. You know, I mean that's too.
Yeah, that's the
too
wrong
simple.
direction.
Yeah, that reading it that way, you know, is. If that begins to kind of dominate my image of it, then it's going to be disappointing. So far it isn't, you know. So far it's sufficiently confusing for that not to be the only thing I'm seeing.
Yeah, sure.